On the night of December 19, 1979, Martinko attended a banquet for the Kennedy Concert Choir at the Sheraton Inn in Cedar Rapids. She was dressed in a black jersey dress, black scarf, pantyhose, and heels, complemented by a waist-length white and brown rabbit fur jacket. Carrying a brown leather purse, she invited a friend to join her on a shopping trip to the newly opened Westdale Mall, where she also worked. However, her friend declined, and Martinko's subsequent attempts to finding a shopping companion were unsuccessful. Despite carrying $186 with the intention of finalizing the purchase of a winter coat on layaway, Martinko went to the mall alone. Her last sighting was outside a jewelry store in the mall around 9 p.m. Concerned about her absence, her father reported her missing at 2 a.m. The police, along with her father, initiated a search at 4 a.m., but they had no idea how disturbing the upcoming revelation would be for them. Let us delve into one of the most captivating investigations in recorded history, the enigma of the Michelle Martinko case. This particular case is not intended for those with a weak constitution, as it entails disturbingly graphic depictions of a heinous act. If you are of a sensitive nature, proceed with caution. Now, let's jump into the investigation. Michelle Marie Martinko, born on October 6, 1961 in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, was a younger of two daughters to Albert F. Martinko and Janet Martin. She went to Cedar Rapids Kennedy High School, where she was a good student and well-liked by school staff. Michelle was not just a student. She was also a talented performer, joining the Twirling Scot and participating in choirs and theater. Despite being a senior with plans to study interior design at Iowa State University, she faced challenges in forming close friendships, which was speculated to be caused by jealousy from other students over her looks and fashionable attire, or conflict over a boy she had dated. Police found the Martinko family's tan and green 1972 Buick Electra. It was parked in the northwest section of the Westdale Mall parking lot, behind the J.C. Penney store. Martinko was found inside, collapsed over the passenger seat and stabbed to death. Janet, the mother of Michelle, reached out to her sister Janelle and her husband John Stonebreaker, informing them of the grisly discovery she had just made. The lifeless body of her beloved daughter was identified by Janet, covered in blood, torn and broken. John vividly recalls a scene where Janet was not crying, but instead gasping and choking, struggling to speak. Michelle had been brutally stabbed 29 times. The wounds littered all over her face, neck, and chest. The medical examiner noted signs of defensive injuries, indicating that she fought her attacker. After thorough investigation, the police confirmed that Michelle had been killed inside her car, as there was no evidence of blood outside the vehicle. The estimated time of her death was between 8 and 10 p.m., as determined by the medical examiner. The weapon used in this heinous act was described as sharp-pointed, but could not be definitively identified as a knife. The size of the weapon remained a mystery, even to the experienced medical examiner. The prime suspect was believed to have entered her car and, without warning, stabbed and mutilated her. The possibility of robbery was quickly ruled out, as the money she had brought along to buy a coat was still present in the car, along with the other items she had purchased. Police discovered that Michelle went into the mall that night, the night of the 19th of December. Saw a few people she knew who were also shopping there. had food with a friend in the food court, and went to the store to collect the coat. Michelle had $186 with her in cash for the coat, but when she saw the coat, she realized that she didn't want it, so she didn't purchase it. Michelle purchased a few other items at the mall. Her car wasn't parked close to the door of the mall, so Michelle would have had to walk alone in the dark for a few minutes. She told someone earlier that evening that she was nervous as she felt that somebody was watching her. The autopsy confirmed Michelle had been stabbed to death. A pathologist said the fatal stab wound was to her heart, and as a result, she bled to death. It was also determined that she was not sexually assaulted, but police believe the motive may still have been a sexual one, and Michelle had fought so hard that the perpetrator may not have been able to follow through on the original plan. Michelle had defensive slice wounds on her hands and body. Police had to establish if the killer was known to Michelle or a complete stranger. Police believe that the killer wore gloves, as they found rubber glove impressions on the outside of the car in dirt and inside the car in blood. No fingerprints were found. Even though police obtained blood scraping from the inside of the car on the gear shift and a spot of blood was found on Michelle's black dress, DNA in 1979 wasn't as advanced as it is now. Even though Michelle was seen by multiple people inside the mall and she parked at the mall, no witnesses came forward to say they saw her inside her car or that they saw someone approach her. Police had few leads and appealed to the public for tips. A police spokesman estimated that in the week after Martinko's murder, more than 200 people responded to the detective's appeal in the news for information concerning the case. Police interviewed numerous people, and several were cleared of suspicion through use of a polygraph. One of the first people to be questioned by the police was Michelle's ex-boyfriend Andy Seidel. Michelle met Andy when she was 15 years old at a roller skating rink. He was just a year older than her, and they dated for 2 years. Michelle ended the relationship, and her friends thought Andy didn't take it too well, and they told police that he wanted to know her every move and who she was dating. Police discovered that on the 19th of December, Andy met Michelle at the mall. When police asked him about it, he told them that he went home afterwards, and his mother confirmed that he was home that night and had returned shortly after the mall was closed. Andy told police that he was on good terms with Michelle and they had just grown apart, and that was why the relationship ended. But despite suspicions and rumors, police had no actual evidence against Andy, and he was not arrested or charged. He left Cedar Rapids after high school and joined the Navy. Even after he left, many believed that he was responsible for Michelle's murder and wondered if there would ever be enough evidence to charge and convict him. A juvenile found carrying a knife was interviewed and ruled out in her murder, as was a shopping center employee who had told police that he enjoyed following women and ogling store mannequins. Rumors began to circulate about the crime. Some thought that Martinko had received harassing phone calls before her death, but police stated that they did not think so. Another rumor emerged that a second stabbing had happened in the following days, and that the police were keeping it secret, which police denied. Dennis Lee McKee, once considered a prime suspect in Michelle's murder, died on Jan 15, 2012. Dennis was convicted in that case on evidence that he broke into a woman's Cedar Rapids home, November 12, 1979, held a knife to her neck, threatened to kill her sleeping children, and then taped her hands behind her back and gagged her. McKee raped and abused her in ways that caused pain more severe than childbirth, the Gazette cited, based on court documents. Controversy arose 5 months after the murder, after a woman who was driving by the mall parking lot in the early hours of December 20 came forward with information. She had looked into the parking lot as she drove by to check for her daughter's car because her daughter worked at the mall and had had car trouble before. She claimed to have seen 2 cars in the lot, one of which was Michelle's, and a man standing next to the open driver's side door of Michelle's car. She was unsure her information would be of any use because she had read that the murder happened between 10 p.m. and midnight, and it was 2 a.m. when she drove by. The woman communicated her information to the daughter of the Secretary of Public Safety Commissioner and believed that it would be passed on to the police if it was important. The police never received information, and the woman did not contact police until months later when they reissued a call for any information connected to the murder. Detectives considered charging the commissioner with failure to pass along the information to police, but no charges were pursued. On June 19, 1980, police released a composite sketch of a man believed to have killed Michelle, which they formed from descriptions provided by two witnesses under hypnosis. They described a white man in his late teens or early 20s, around 6 feet tall and weighing 165 to 175 pounds, with brown eyes and curly brown hair. In the year after the killing, the number of people interviewed by police reached the hundreds, and up to 30 people were interviewed under hypnosis. As the investigation dwindled, a $10,000 reward was offered for information that would lead police to the killer. Despite numerous interviews and even hypnosis-assisted witness accounts, the investigation faced dead ends. As time went on, the case grew cold. In the mid-1980s, Michelle's father filed a lawsuit against the owners of the Westdale Mall and claimed negligence in not providing reasonable security on the night of the murder. The case was appealed and was eventually decided by the Iowa Supreme Court in favor of the mall owners. Michelle's father, Albert, died in 1995. Her mother, Janet, died in 1998. In 2005, 26 years after Michelle's killing, Detective Douglas Larison began investigating the cold case in 2005. He was once a classmate of Michelle's. Now he was trying to figure out who killed her. Michelle's dress and steering wheel were eventually used to obtain DNA. At a news conference held October 2, 2006, cold case investigators Detective Doug Larison and Detective George Abboud announced they had developed new evidence in the 1979 murder and asked the public for assistance in identifying a male with a cut on his hand during the time of the murder. In the 2 years following the announcement, the police received a number of calls, a few of which Detective Larison said provided new information that helped eliminate a few more suspects. None of the leads it produced, however, uncovered a DNA match to the blood sample. Documents concluded that fewer than 1 in 100 billion people would match the DNA profile. The results were entered into the Combined DNA Index System, the National DNA Database, but no matches were found. Eventually, more than 125 people would have their DNA swabbed and compared against a sample taken from the scene. Out of more than 80 potential suspects that had been identified over the years, more than 60 people were tested and cleared of suspicion. In 2015, law enforcement finally caught up with Michelle's killer. Detective Matt Denlinger was assigned to the case. In 1979, his father was one of the original detectives working the case. Detective Denlinger contacted Parabon Nanolabs in 2017 and asked for their assistance. It was hired to create additional images of the killer based solely on DNA clues about facial appearance and ancestry. A composite sketch was created using the suspect's DNA. The images looked considerably different from the 1980 composite sketch and showed a man with blonde hair and blue eyes. The company also produced approximations of how the man would have aged in the years since the crime. In a press conference during which the new image was shared, a former classmate of Michelle exclaimed that the face looked like another one of their classmates. But that classmate had been investigated and was cleared based on DNA swabs several years before. The police received more than 100 tips following the release of the new images. In 2018, the DNA phenotyping company took the data they had collected the year before and entered it into GEDmatch.com. GEDmatch.com is a family finder tool for people who are interested in finding their relatives. GEDmatch returned one person who shared DNA markers with the suspect in Martinko's murder, Brandy Jennings, a Vancouver woman trying to find out more about her father's side of the family. Never expect that her DNA would help catch an Iowa man accused of killing Michelle Martinko 40 years ago. Brandy only learned about the connection a few days ago after people on a Facebook group devoted to the Martinko case called or messaged her about it. Brandy stated that, "I uploaded my DNA to GAD Match, a public database used to research family trees, and forgot about it. It determined her to be likely the killer's second cousins once removed." The company created family trees starting with 4 sets of the woman's great-great-grandparents and reported that the killer was most likely descended from one of those couples. An investigator with the Cedar Rapids Police Department contacted DNA-tested members of 2 of the branches of the family tree and eliminated those branches as containing the killer. He then contacted a member of the 3rd branch, and a DNA test determined that they were first cousins with the killer. That narrowed the suspects down to a set of 3 brothers who had grown up in Manchester, Iowa. The brothers were placed under surveillance, and investigators began to attempt to collect their DNA secretly. On October 29, 2018, an investigator observed one of the brothers, Jerry Lynn Burns, drink multiple sodas using a plastic straw. When Burns disposed of the straw, the investigator collected it and tested it for DNA. Tests eliminated the other 2 brothers as suspects, but the DNA from Jerry's straw matched the blood found on Michelle's clothing. On December 19, 2018, investigators went to Jerry's business in Manchester, Iowa, to interview him. He refused to voluntarily provide a sample of DNA, but was compelled to do so with a search warrant. His hands and arms were also examined for scars, possibly left by the assumed cuts sustained during the attack. Jerry maintained that he did not know Martinko and was not there when she died, although an investigator later testified that Jerry did not specifically deny killing Martinko. He was also not able to provide an explanation for why his DNA would have been present at the crime scene. According to the investigator, Jerry showed almost no emotion during the interview, even when he was eventually told he was being arrested. When asked if he had killed someone that night in 1979, Jerry repeatedly told investigators, "Test the DNA." When the DNA sample was tested, it matched the blood sample found at the crime scene. On December 19, 2018, exactly 39 years after Michelle's murder, Jerry was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. He entered a plea of not guilty. His trial was originally scheduled for October 14, 2019, but in September, the defense requested a delay in order to gather more evidence and interview witnesses. The defense also requested the trial be moved out of Lynn County based on the amount of attention the case had received over the past 4 decades, as well as pervasive and prejudicial pre-trial publicity. Prosecution did not resist either request, and the trial was rescheduled for February 10, 2020 in Scott County. In pre-trial hearings, Jerry's attorney claimed that the police needed a search warrant to gather his DNA from the discarded straw. But the judge determined that discarded property cannot reasonably be considered private. The defense also requested that evidence pertaining to Burns' cell phone browser history be suppressed. Investigators had reviewed Burns' 2018 internet searches and found that he regularly visited websites showing blonde women being raped, stabbed, and strangled, and which depicted sexual intercourse with murder victims. The judge determined the search history was not usable in the trial due to the decades of time separating the murder and the searches. After 2 days of jury selection, the murder trial began on February 12, 2020. The prosecution emphasized the unlikelihood of the DNA evidence matching someone other than the person who left it at the scene. The doctor who performed Michelle's autopsy and investigators in the original case, all now retired, took the stand to testify to how the investigation was conducted and to Michelle's cause of death. The defense argued that DNA evidence had been mishandled and that different articles of clothing from the scene should not have been stored together in one evidence bag. Prosecutors also played a video of a police interview of Jerry in which he denied being at the crime scene on the night of Martinko's murder and could not explain how his DNA had been found at the scene. They also played a later recording after Jerry's arrest in which Jerry questioned whether he could have blocked out memory of committing the crime. The defense brought only one witness, a self-described forensic DNA consultant, who testified on the possibility that police could have mishandled the evidence. He stated that Jerry's DNA could have been at the scene due to secondary transfer, such as skin cells transferring to an article of clothing when someone brushes up against another person. Although he clarified that it was not in his opinion that this was the case with Burns' DNA, prosecutors called a criminalist to contradict the defense's witness. The criminalist said that the storage of Martinko's clothing was not unusual. Jerry's defense team objected to the wording of one of the prosecution's questions, which they claim implied unequivocally that Jerry's blood had been at the scene. The defense requested that the case be declared a mistrial as a result, but the judge denied the request and asked the prosecutor to rephrase the question. On February 24, 2020, after 3 hours of deliberation, the jury found Jerry Lynn Burns guilty of first-degree murder of Michelle Martinko. Iowan law mandates a life sentence without the possibility of parole for first-degree murder. On May 29, 2020, Jerry's attorney filed a motion asking for a new trial, claiming his constitutional and state rights were violated and that the court made a mistake in overriding the request for evidence to be suppressed. On August 7, 2020, Jerry was sentenced to life in prison without parole. In September 2020, Jerry filed a notice of appeal. Burns is currently imprisoned in the Anna Mesa State Penitentiary. On March 31, 2023, the Iowa Supreme Court denied the appeal of Jerry Lynn Burns, now 69, who argued police violated his constitutional rights in obtaining the DNA sample that ultimately tied into the blood found at the murder scene. The majority found police followed the law in obtaining Jerry's DNA from an abandoned drinking straw and did not violate his rights either under the federal or Iowan constitutions. After careful consideration of the case before us, we conclude that the Fourth Amendment did not require police to obtain a warrant before collecting the straw or before analyzing DNA on the straw to determine whether it's matched DNA found on Michelle's dress. Justice David May wrote for the majority. The Michelle Martinko case highlights the resilience of unsolved mysteries. As science and technology have evolved significantly over time, advancements in DNA analysis and forensic techniques have brought new life to cases. Despite the case remaining unsolved, the intersection of science and justice remains dynamic. The case underscores the importance of staying updated on technological advancements and engaging in conversations to keep cases in the public eye. As we conclude our investigation into the case of Michelle Martinko, we are reminded of the enduring secret of our collective curiosity. True crime is a journal into the unknown, and necessarily you participate in these conversations. If you find this quest interesting, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell for more interesting true crime stories. But we're not done yet. We want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts, ideas, and most importantly, suggestions for future posts in the comment section below. Your feedback guides our research, and we look forward to investigating the issues that interest you most. Thank you for joining us on this true crime journey. Your support fuels our passion for uncovering untold stories, and we'll look forward to delving into more mysteries together. Until next time, be curious and come up with those suggestions.